everybody, welcome to the show. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Raising A to Z. It is an inspirational and informational YouTube channel all about homeschooling. My name is Amanda. I am a former teacher turned homeschool mom. And I have to tell you something, and I feel like a lot of people don't know this, but as a homeschooler, I don't teach every single subject every single day. I don't even teach every subject every week or every month. Now, before you get all worked up, I have a very good reason for this. And I'm going to tell you why I don't teach every subject every month and why maybe you should take a break from certain subjects or kind of lessen your subject load and how it might really help you out in your homeschooling. But before I share my dirty little secret as a homeschool mom, why don't you guys go down and subscribe and click the bell to get notifications so you know when we put out new videos. If you're looking to add some excitement to some of your subjects, like maybe science, you'll definitely want to take a look in our shop where you'll find things like the Raising A to Z Essential Science Journal. This journal is the perfect companion journal to go with any science curriculum. It helps walk you through the scientific method, and really you open it and can do any experiment you want and just have everything you need all in one journal. So it's a great companion for any curriculum. So like I said, I don't teach every subject every day. I don't even teach it every week. And I know you might be kind of freaking out like, Amanda, what do you do? Why don't you do that? Well, first off, if you're wondering what subjects I do teach in my homeschooling, because that's always a question, like what are you teaching? What subjects are you teaching? I have a whole video on what subjects you can teach. I will put a link for that up here. But I want to tell you that as a teacher in a homeschool, I have a different perspective to this. So for example, I know that teachers don't teach every subject every day themselves. Most schools that I've been in, most schools in our district, most schools that I know across Ontario, and I can say with a lot of confidence, this is a big thing in most schools in North America, is the focus is always on language and math. Everything else is kind of like filler. And even when they are doing science or social studies or whatever, there's always more of an emphasis on the language and the math when it comes to the teaching time. And that is governed by your state or your province, how many minutes you're allowed to do of each per day, how many minimum minutes you're required to do. And I know that like in our district, I think it's like 90 minutes of language every single day, 60 minutes of math. And then I think it's like 40 minutes of science twice a week. So not even public school teachers are not teaching every single subject every day. So that would be really unrealistic for you as a homeschooler to do that yourself, especially since we are not trying to make school at home. We are creating a whole new learning environment for our kids. So that's the first thing I always like to remind parents, is that teachers don't do it, so why should you? The second reason why we don't do every subject, even within a month, is because we do a lot of unit studies and a lot of kind of intermingled things when it comes to learning. So we are definitely eclectic homeschoolers, which means that we kind of beg and borrow and choose different things from different approaches across the spectrum of homeschooling. And so we do a lot of unschooling, a little bit of unit studies, and a little bit of hint of Charlotte Mason kind of approach. That's kind of our basis of what we like to do. And as a result, we kind of have a different approach to how we do our schooling. So I kind of take the unit studies and unschooling approach for how we pick our unit studies every month. So I let the kids pick topics that they want to study, and then I help build a unit study around what they're interested in. And I provide all kinds of materials and readings, and I'll bring in different documentaries and stuff, and we'll kind of learn about one topic that they've chosen, and we study that for a month, and then we move on to something else and we'll study something different. And I find this has worked really, really well for us, because it kind of gives me a really great way to like make sure that we're covering different topics and different subjects without having to cover multiple subjects individually. Let me explain. So for example, we are doing an ocean unit right now. This unit that Zoe picked, she is totally in love with it. Alexi's really enjoying it too, which is fun. And so this is kind of like a science-based unit. So we're doing a lot on like biology and environmental studies, and like focusing on learning about oceans, their layers. We're learning about the animals that live there. We're learning about the different environments and habitats. And so that is very much a science-based unit for us. But in there we have little sprinkles of other things. We have little sprinkles of a little bit of history and a little bit of geography, There's definitely lots of like literature that we obviously read, and so we're doing lots of like vocabulary and stuff from our unit study. Okay, so while the predominant theme of our month kind of falls under the subject of science, we are still kind of like hitting different subjects at the same time. We're hitting literacy, we're hitting a little bit of social studies in there, we're doing lots of art. So like we're hitting different things depending on what the topic is. So it is mostly a science topic, right? But we're still hitting other subjects at the same time. A few months earlier, we did a whole month on mythical creatures, which you're like, Amanda, that is definitely not science. They're mythical, they are not fact, they are not real. Exactly, but it was a fantastic unit on history. So we did a lot on like Greek myths and Greek stories and the history behind where these creatures came from and what their stories were. So it was actually a very heavy unit on like history and social studies. And so that was like a very interesting unit for us to study. So it was a very, like I said, history and social studies heavy unit. And then we did a lot of like art and literacy and like storytelling on the side, right? So because we're doing this kind of this unit study approach, while we have one predominant subject, we're also able to bring in a lot of different subjects in as kind of like little mini lessons and little mini kind of like a secondary subject that gets brought into it often. The nice thing about this is it kind of links everything together. So we're not learning about oceans, the history of oceans, and the conservation of oceans. We're learning about oceans in its entirety. And so it kind of helps form those links and those connections a lot easier, because everything that we're reading, everything that we're looking at, everything, it's all interconnected. So it helps build those kind of connections a lot easier. And that's just fantastic. Whenever you can make learning easier, like we love that, right? And because we're doing it as like a family, when we do these unit studies, we're able to like go across the age gap, right? So even though Alexi is in grade 1, Zoe is in junior kindergarten, we're able to cover everything. So sometimes the books we pick up are a little bit older and we're getting a lot more like nonfiction things, and there's a lot more information in them that Alexi's picking up. Sometimes we're reading stories that might be a little bit babyish for Alexi, but Zoe's really enjoying them. But then for the most part, for example, we found this book at the library that was like a informational book on sharks. They both picked up different points from this book, and they both were able to find information that like suited their age level and their age mental appropriateness for their own education while covering the one topic. And do I expect a little bit more from Alexi than Zoe? Yes. So for example, I expect Alexi to kind of know and remember the different zones of the ocean. Zoe, I'm just happy if she remembers that there are zones and maybe able to name one or two of the zones and kind of like what the big ideas of having different zones in the ocean are, right? So just building on what they're doing, and they both pick up on different things. They're both getting lots of science, they get a little bit of social studies, lots of literacy, and we do math on the side. So by the end of the month, we've had a really great science heavy month. And then we're gonna pick a new topic and try something else. This kind of comes to the question of, well, if you're teaching like this way, doesn't that mean primarily that you're teaching like, we do spelling and grammar kind of literacy work, we do math, and then we do our unit study. And then on Fridays we do like art and music kind of stuff. But doesn't that mean that you're only really doing like 3 subjects a day for the most part? Yes. Is that enough? Again, the answer is yes. So I'm gonna explain this in terms of like how it would work in the public school system. So I'm gonna do grade 7 for simplicity's sake, but it works across the board because in Ontario, up until grade 6, kids take social studies, but when they go into grade 7 and 8, they split social studies into 2 subjects, and they do half of the year as geography and half of it as history. So sometimes it's just easier to talk about grade 7 in that sense. You can do it in grade 6, it's just they do 2 units that are just much longer. Really, that's it. But in grade 7, for example, there are 4 units in every grade 7, in every grade when it comes to science. So there are 4 topics throughout the year, 40 minutes twice a week, 4 subjects from September to June. And then they do 2 history topics in grade 7, and then they do 2 geography, which is 8. So they cover 8 topics When it comes to science and social studies, history and geography, they do 8 in a year. By doing one subject for one full month, I'm able to do 10 to 12 a year, depending on if we're going to homeschool all year long or not. So I'm able to actually cover more topics while actually doing less work and less prep and less curriculum. I'm able to do more and cover more social studies, more science with my kids than the public school while doing less work on a regular basis. And it works out solely because, you know, how much time schooling takes and the fact that we have these bigger chunks. And that's the nice reason why we love unit studies too, is because we can sit down and really like dive into one subject for a good chunk of time, learn everything we want about it, learn everything, like study all kinds of things, find YouTube videos, go on all kinds of different little rabbit trails and answer questions that they came up that I never thought to ask. And we have the time to do that because we have a whole month dedicated to just one subject. Whereas in the public school system, we just don't have the time to dedicate that much to one subject, and especially a subject outside of literacy and math. And so that is why we absolutely love unit studies. That's why we just think it's such a great option for a lot of families, especially if you're just starting out. And as a result, we cover so much. So when it comes to planning our unit studies, I have a whole video on how to plan a unit study. It's right up here. It's fantastic. And I actually let the kids pick most of our study options. They usually pick like 3 to 4 topics or 3 to 4 questions, and I kind of help make them into a unit study. Sometimes they're very interesting questions. Zoe recently asked me to study how people carried things in the olden days. Not sure how that's going to become a unit study, but we'll get there. We'll get there. But so I let the kids pick topics, and usually I kind of look, if they pick 3 or 4, usually about 3, that ends up with like 6 topics. I aim for 9 unit studies a year, 9 to 10. So if I end up with 6 questions, I kind of see like where were they kind of lacking. So were they lacking a little bit on the social studies? Were they lacking a little bit on the science in terms of like the numbers? Because I kind of want to have at least 4 of each. And then like if we were a little, say we didn't have enough science topics, I would kind of throw out some ideas. So usually like go through Pinterest and find ideas of unit studies or whatever and just have like a list. What do you want to learn? Do you want to learn about this? Do you want to learn about that? Do you want to, and oftentimes they just don't know and something will hit and they're like, oh, that's really cool. We're going to be doing weather in a couple of weeks. That was not a topic that my kids suggested, but when I suggested it, they were like, that would be really kind of cool, Mom. I was like, cool. We'll definitely do a whole unit on weather in May or April and like just see where things go. So it works out really nicely for us because we're able to study less time in a day and do less schoolwork in every day, but we're actually able to study more topics, get deeper, and then we still have time for a lot of things that we want to teach outside of like typical school. So we get to do a lot of life skills. We get to do a lot of like art and music with our kids. We get to do things like budgeting and gardening and going out to like different places with our kids and spending time with our family. And so that's what I encourage. If you are a new homeschooling parent, I definitely encourage you to start with like only doing 3 subjects at a time tops, maybe 4, and kind of building from there, because you can always add stuff in. It gets really hard to take a lot of stuff out because it's just human nature. We don't want to take out the subjects, especially the core subjects. And so by doing this, I can actually hit all and study all the subjects that we need to cover or would want to cover, especially if you're in like a district where you have specific requirements. We can cover everything, but we actually do it more efficiently and actually get a lot deeper than what the kids might do in school. So I hope this is kind of eye-opening for you. I hope it encourages you to maybe try taking a step back and doing less, but going deeper, which is kind of what I'm going at. Like, you want to do less, but go deeper when it comes to subjects. And I think this is just like a really cool way to do that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this entertaining and informational, and I hope you're encouraged to try it. So before you go, make sure you subscribe and click the bell. And then if you want to see how I kind of implement these things on a regular basis, you'll definitely want to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.